Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of 6 Degrees of Association. Today we welcome Suzanne Bohle. I've got a chance to meet Suzanne over the past maybe 12 months. I'm really excited about this episode and thought I'd turn it over to Suzanne early and tell us a little bit about yourself, Suzanne, where you are now and what maybe brought you to associations.
Sure thing. Thanks, Lucas. Great to be with you. Currently, I'm in the DC area, and I work for the Council of State Restaurant Associations. That is a mouthful. We call ourselves CSRA. We're an umbrella organization of all the state restaurant associations around the country. So it's the 50 states, DC and Puerto Rico, and we help support their success generically. And what that means is we have education for them, 2 conferences a year. We support their advocacy efforts, which were ultimately so important during the pandemic and still continue to be. We also support them with weekly and monthly calls, group calls, where there's a lot of best practice sharing and information of that like. Also, we work very closely with the National Restaurant Association in the DC and Chicago offices, supporting the industry that way. So immediately after college, I was a communications major, and I found this position with the Virginia Trial Lawyers Association in Richmond, Virginia. And I didn't know law. I was a communications person. I was putting out their newsletters, but I loved the member interaction and the customer support, basically. I was new, I was young, and there was so much to do, and it was immediate fit, and I loved it. And then ended up moving to Florida and got a position within professional golf. And it was also an association, and it was that same feel, the taking care of board members, that gave me my first entree into event management and some sales pieces. And then I've just continued. I then went to positions with chefs, American Culinary Federation, and then ultimately got to where I am today. So it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, professional golf. Usually once you get to a professional golf association in Florida, that's hard to tear yourself away from. But there's got to be some great experiences, some great stories. Is it something you can share from that?
Oh, absolutely. Our big goals at that point, I was also an umbrella organization of the PGA Tour events around the country. And we worked in conjunction with the PGA Tour. They were all sanctioned events. And so when there were big issues going on, contract TV negotiations, we were at the table on that. I worked in the years when Tiger Woods was, top of the world. So the eyes of the world were on golf, and it was a really exciting time. And what I loved a lot about it too is the amazing volunteers that worked at those events, and they gave back to charity in their hometown. So you were supporting a great sport. You were making an impact locally with the charities. And so that was a big piece of it. In fact, most of the board members that I work with were volunteers who were giving of their time, uber professionals in their respective communities and supporting their great sport.
Yeah, you've stayed with associations. I myself have stayed with associations a couple of decades now. I think the same things maybe bring you back to it is just that there's mission, and then there's people, and everybody's sort of heading in the right direction and working together to sort of accomplish something. But that's a little bit of me. What about associations? What is it for you? Keeps you coming back?
It is the fact that every one of these where I've worked, you're working with people who want to make an impact, a positive impact in their leaders. And so I mentioned the community folks in golf, but they were giving back, and they were interested in pushing forward with their industry, whatever it was. And that's been impactful. Right now I work with 52 CEOs around the country who are exceptional leaders. And so not only do you get to work together on things, you learn from them. Every time I have a new boss every year, and I'm blessed with wonderful leaders, and I learn something new. They're very different styles. So you adjust every year, and I feel like I'm getting a master's degree in management from working with these folks.
Yeah, I think it is. No 2 days are the same within associations. I would say that's always nice. You're riding along with not only the economic impact of your industry, but you're also riding with people, right? And that changes. And I feel like I'm a lifelong learner myself, and we get to learn all these great lessons about, what it looks like to be a leader at the top of leaders, right? Because that's really what the association is you're leading leaders and you get an opportunity. I'd be curious, what are some of those things you've learned maybe just from the past couple of years? What stands out to you?
I think last year I had a phenomenal, or 2 years ago, actually, as time flies.
I know, add a year to every year now from there forward.
There you go. Chair, her name was Sonia Riggs. She runs the Colorado Restaurant Association, and she was very big in governance. And so during her year, our strategic plan was up. And so we got to go through the experience as a board of developing our strategic plan for the next 5 years. And when you're staff member, I'm a staff of one full-time, and I have a great number of supporters with contract work, but it's hard to kind of see the big picture. So I get with the board members and we saw the big picture, developing that strategic plan. And I've got this phenomenal tool that I'm following for the next 5 years. And so seeing the importance and value of governance and what that means and how it can, you get it straight with that plan and you're set for the next 5 years. You've got a path and and everybody follows it. We report on it. It's just a great tool. And so governance, that was big from her. She also helped me look at our policies and procedures, and they needed some tweaking. Probably most associations do. And so you learn, yes, you learn the rules. I mean, the rules of governance for associations, they probably apply to other businesses as well. But that was a big lesson I learned from her.
Yeah. So we did a lot of, helping associations on strategic planning, in the past couple of years for obvious reasons as well. And one of the things that I maybe hope has changed is we would see a lot of groups that did strategic plans for 5 years. Did it impact you all and any of your other leaders? Have you sort of shortened that window, or maybe 5 years, we need to revisit this more often? And has that philosophy changed?
Some of our people have. Ours is a 4-year plan. And in the past, we would sort of rubber stamp the one that we work very closely with the National Restaurant Association. Mm-hmm. We would rubber stamp theirs. We, however, are not an industry of restaurant owners. We are an industry of associations. So this time it was like, what is CSRA really about? What do we need to do? And so because of that shift, we made it a 4-year operation. And I could see it being tweaked. I've got some association members who they've been in the space for 30 plus years. They know what they need to do for their associations, and they'll tweak it every 2 years or so with their staff. And they've got a tool that they follow, just like we do. But it looks different, but it works for them, and it is like you've said, a shorter span.
Yeah, even we as an organization, we were doing annual strategic planning twice a year. So we actually meet on a mid-year basis now. We pull everybody in. We're like, we're not going to let this thing get off, even sniff things getting off the rails. And there's all sorts of talk about what the economy is going to do later this year, lots of speculation. And so, we've gotten a very small window now as well. So the strategic plan that you all put together, probably not a complete secret. I'd love to hear, what are some of those things that you've now put on your strategic plan for the next couple of years? What are some of the big initiatives that you're focusing on as an organization?
There's a lot on, one of the goals is collaboration. And so that is working in conjunction with each other, also with the National Restaurant Association and their arms. And so within the National Restaurant Association, for example, there's a restaurant law center that does amicus filings and supports the industry. And we felt like there's more opportunities there for states to work with the RLC, the Restaurant Legal Center. And so that's incorporated. And so I can see that coming to play. Last fall at our conference, we held a session in conjunction with that group and talked about having a legal center at your state. And then we are looking at holding our conference back to back with them next fall. And so that will give an opportunity for our CEOs, our state execs, to be present at that and learn from the great legal minds in the restaurant space. That's one element. Another is developing some committees that support our work, and one of those is a business development committee, and they've been really instrumental in helping us look, number one, at CSRA's packages, our partnership packages, and then also looking at ways that we can develop programs that support the states and that are, financial tools for CSRA, bringing in additional revenue. We all are all about non-dues revenue, and so looking at those pieces. And then also an advocacy committee. We felt that there were so many shifts during COVID and the pandemic, and we all know everything. We got Zoom, we've got everything more at our disposal. But one of the things that happened with our group is we were meeting weekly with the National Restaurant Association on what was going on advocacy-wise at the state and national levels, and how we work together and on those things. And of course, they were phenomenal that we were all able to talk to each other. But then what happens, we had this conference that we always have in November. Like, what do we talk about? We talk to each other all the time.
We're talking so often. Like every day.
We are.
Yeah.
And so this advocacy committee is looking at some ways to bring some of that weekly sharing together in more regular webinars and kind of tweaking the way we do our annual meetings, going to more policy on one day, tactics on another, because we're kind of in the weeds every week on content.
Yeah, you work kind of in the business every day, getting some time still to focus and working sort of on the organization, the bigger. I like that segmenting by day. I'd not heard that sort of concept. What led you there? That's an interesting twist.
Because we realized we used to just have these panels. A typical conference would be a keynote each day, and then panels on, how you're working on advocacy at the state level on specific examples. And we thought, let's go to this policy one day, tactics another. And mostly some of it was because we also have national chain representatives with us, and they're more interested in the policy. Our states are more interested in the tactics. So how do we serve both groups? And so that was part of it, and it worked pretty well. Last year was the first year, and we will get better at it.
Well, it's really neat. I mean, in concept, you could allow people to partake in one day versus the other, or both, if both were interesting. But that could be something I could see that could really apply to other organizations, and probably some that you've been a part of. If you're this part of the industry, you could come in for day one and just spend all of your time really entrenched in focus, and then maybe bits and pieces of day two, or vice versa. I think we may have just fed some people some nuggets or something to think about. That's good.
There you go. That means you can charge for this podcast now.
Oh, not yet. We don't know. It's all free. So something we also talked about sort of pre-call was your calling to servant leadership and what that means to you. And you said that's a big part of your own core personal mission and how that kind of weaves in. I'd love to hear more about where that started, where that came from, and how that gets implemented in your daily life.
Sure. And it's funny, when I first came upon the word, I was like, oh, that's what I am. And it kind of was like a light bulb for me, because it's just part of my DNA. I mentioned when I started in the association space, I just felt like a very natural fit, and I love it. And I mean, you have to manage it. You can't give everybody everything, but
right.
I love that concept. And for me personally, it's important that I give back. And so I mentioned what I did in golf. They were supporting the communities. When I worked with the chef group, I launched a insurance program. This is way back before, national Obamacare and that sort of thing. But I felt such value in providing something for these folks. And currently, I know that the work that we're doing at the CSRA is trickling down to the state restaurant associations, and it's helping so many in the workforce, which is such a great need right now. So I think that for me is my love, and it works.
Where do you think that, for you personally, where did the servant leadership come? Is this just part of your upbringing? Like, was there an inspirational mentor that you felt sort of breathed this in along the way? Where did it come from?
I think some of it is blue collar upbringings. I was born in Pittsburgh, and my father was transferred to the DC area, and so you go from kind of a blue collar to a white collar, and at my high school, everybody was expected to go to college, and it was just the way that I saw these collegiate people and professional people that I work with. I could see them serving. My mom worked with attorneys as a child, and I would see their devotion and work. And I think it was probably a combination of DNA and seeing the DC area and the impact of the professional world and what you can do. So I think it was just like a melding of things. And it's inside of some people, I guess.
Yeah, I think sometimes it just comes naturally. Sometimes it's inspired at some point along the way. I'm surrounded, I feel like, in my personal life by servant leaders. My wife's a teacher. My in-laws were both pastors that worked on the Hill for nonprofits. My grandfather was the CEO of an association who, very much led that way as well. And so I guess that's my drive as well. And I love that word. I love that concept. Same thing with you. I started hearing it in this concept of you work for others, they don't work for you. Like it just fits so well. I mean, how we can continue to champion that message. I'm open to more ideas on that as well. Switching gears, another question, we shared some questions ahead of time. One thing I didn't share is, technology, I think, is out there. It's booming, like ChatGPT and all this AI and things is all over the place. I feel like every other post is about this stuff now. Like, have you guys thought about using that at CSRA? Have you already started using it? Are there conversations? Like, what are the technology type of items that are happening in your industry?
There's a lot of this last 2 weeks data has come up so many times in phone calls. And so I see it in the industry. I'm not so sure yet that CSRA will, but I mean, honestly, at the beginning of the pandemic, I couldn't even run a Zoom. And now here I am recording them and downloading them and editing them. And so we have grown technologically at CSRA, but I see that data and AI, that's going to impact the restaurant industry hugely. And so it's happening. And I've got my finger on the pulse, but I'm going to need to start to dive in and pay a bit more attention, I think.
I think we all are. How are the members, or what type of data are the members requesting, and how do they talk about using that in the industry, for example?
Well, I'm thinking of one member that, and I remember a partner that we have that has some artificial intelligence out there. The company is called BYOD, and their AI is called Mabel, and it's an automated attendant that helps at restaurants. And ultimately the idea is for Mabel to take the information that she's gathering from weather and tickets and such that they're seeing and project, okay, you know what, in 2 hours we're going to need more staff, or the weather's coming in, we're going to have to cut people in the afternoon or something like that. So that idea of using artificial intelligence, it's out there, and that's but one example that I know of. And Mabel's just a great name, but and I think in terms of data from our members, the big thing is access to information, and they need it when they need it. And so we're working on enhancing the ways that we offer our resources to our members. Right now we have a mobile app, and we need to get that enabled more. We use it for our conferences. Mm-hmm. However, we know if there's our forum features, and there are other ways to better use that. So we're working on that. And we just recently upgraded our website, and that we have easier member access to some of the resources. So we're working on that. Small associations, the baby steps.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought of one for your industry while we were prepping and leading up to this. Is I took some of our folks to a management meeting down in New Orleans last year, and we stayed at sort of like an Airbnb, but we had the building, right, and we walked in. And at the front desk, there was a virtual check-in person, right? So I think the person was I asked, they were in the Philippines, but it was a screen, and we talked to the screen. They could see you. They could see you when you walked in. They had information that they could put up on the screen. And I thought, are we going to use this for restaurants? Am I going to walk into a restaurant one day, and instead of having a host or hostess, I'm going to chat with somebody who's in a completely different state, maybe a completely different country, who will check me in, show me where my table is, maybe even on the map within the restaurant. Like, is that where we're headed?
It could be. I mean, you've seen, again, I keep bringing up our friend, the pandemic, but QR codes at tables, when I think that was quickly accelerated because of the circumstances that we were in. And I think they've slowed down a bit now that we're more back to a regular, put that in quotes, world. Yeah. But it's happening. And I think some of the quick serve restaurants, you'll see some self-ordering on, kiosks. So yeah, it could be.
I don't know that I've been to a restaurant without a white tablecloth that didn't have a QR code. I mean, I think that's a changed forever type of thing.
I think you're right. And I was at a restaurant this weekend, and I went to use the QR code, and they said, no, we have menus. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what's a menu? Yeah.
Do you have both? Can I still look at it on my phone?
I know. I'm so used to my phone. Yeah.
I took my son out for dinner last night, and we sat there, I kid you not, 15 minutes. And the woman comes back and said, "Are you ready to order?" And I said, "Well, we never got menus." And then she turns the napkin thing around and there's a QR code on it. I mean, it was about this big. It was about the size of a quarter. Like, I just missed it. She goes, "Oh, I'm sorry." So there's this assumption now that that is just where we're going. One of the questions I wanted to ask you is, it's a good place of trust, right? We can share all the successes and maybe some failures too. Like, everybody makes mistakes. It's just sort of human nature. And are you open to sharing one of your mistakes along the way? Because I like to think, great, I made a lot of mistakes, but I also learned about some things along the way, learned what to do, what not to do. Is there a mistake you're willing to share from an association perspective that we could help others not make?
Absolutely. I think recently on a call, I was revealing a bit too much information on a topic. And what I had was the boss of somebody who was on that call called me exceptionally gracefully and said, I want to talk about something that happened. And she corrected me, and what I valued most was the fact that she approached me and talked about it, and I learned, and she said, "We're done. We won't talk about this again." I said, "That's great." So I think from that, I'm not going to talk about what I did, but I'm going to talk about the approach that you just have to talk to people. It's so much is about relationships and communication. She called me and said that really wasn't very good, and it was done. And that's why I remember details of it, but I would just put it in the past.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, just a life lesson that, it's a digital world. It's transactional. I think, things can get misconstrued over email, certainly over text. I literally see it happen every single day. And I can't encourage it enough. And I'm still learning this lesson. The best thing you can do is sometimes just pick up the phone and just call somebody. I mean, it's becoming a lost art with all of the AI and the bots, and everybody wants to incorporate this stuff into their website. And can we just automate now the entire member experience? Like, no, you can't. And there's no better retention method, and there never will be, than to just speak with somebody, listen to them, and hear them out. And same thing goes, I would say, for conflict resolution, if that's not too strong of a word, conflict in this case, but anything, like, the clarity comes from just the conversation. I will forever believe that.
It's true. And something else that I've learned, this has happened probably 10, 20 times more so when I was younger and didn't have the ability to manage my emotions. You would email somebody something that was not, you were fired up, let's just say. Yeah. And I know that feeling, and I just won't send it. And you're right. I agree. The phone call is the best way, but at a minimum, if you've got emotions on something, and for me, if I have to have someone look at it, I know there's something wrong with it. And so just hold at least wait overnight, if not an hour, before you fire off that communication.
I like the overnight piece. I mean, write everything out that you're thinking, right? All feelings are valid. That's what you're feeling at the moment. It came from someplace. Get it all down on paper, let it sit, come back to it. But then I still think, I mean, there's certainly opportunities where you need to put things in writing, right? As a leader, as a good communicator, certainly things need to go in writing. But maybe even then, still follow up with a call and make sure that some of that intent isn't lost. I can't imagine how many times I've sent text or even emojis or something like that over a phone or email, and my intent probably was never almost 1,000% captured. You just can't. There's body language, there's tone, all of that, and I guess that's what I would say for association execs too. Like, do not miss the opportunity to speak directly with a member. Do not miss the opportunity to pick up a phone call, go visit them. I see a lot of executives in the past couple of years that just became road warriors through everything that we've been through. And that's what made them successful was, hey, we're just going to get on the road. We're going to go make sure everybody's okay. We're going to meet face to face. And that led to some major success in lieu of doing live events where they could have normally had that conversation.
That's exactly it. Our people are on the road. I almost call them road shows. I followed a lot of them on LinkedIn, and you just see what they're doing, and they're out there, and that's part of their job. One of my CEOs said that is part of our job. We are the cheerleader, and it's true. We're leaders in the industry, and industry's been hit, and we're still here, and we're going strong.
Yeah. Well, you all do such nice events, right? I mean, I admire you guys go to nice places. And I think that that's a part of it, right? That can be a draw as much as the conversation or everything else. Is that an intentional part of the strategy? Is let's go somewhere people would want to go, and not just, I don't want to pick on any particular city. I could, but I won't. But you know those cities you just don't want to go to, but they have a venue and it's convenient, but it's not really where people want to go.
Right. And we have a philosophy that we want people to experience some ancillary time on the shoulder. So that is often part of our decision making. A lot of times it's budget, and because we're in the industry, we will get special deals from locations to visit them. And because it's important that we support the industry, we do tend to get access to some really lovely places. But we get a lot of work done, and people are very sensitive about posting on social media. You don't want to make it look like you're sitting on a beach, but we are hard workers. We've got strong sets of 6 to 8 hours of education each day. So we build in the work before the fun.
Well, you have to have both. I mean, you can recharge the batteries faster sitting on the beach, I would imagine, than anywhere else. So it's okay. I'm going to give you a pass on the beach. Somebody has to go to the beach, right? And I imagine you have great food while you're doing it, and that's okay too.
Oh, we do. This is part of the, I used to try to do Weight Watchers when I worked with chefs, and they would look at me like, whatever.
Not here.
We make food. Yeah.
Yeah, good luck. You can eat 10% then. That's a good answer.
Exactly.
It's still going to be good food. Well, do you have a favorite place? Like, what's the best venue you feel like you've ever put together in terms of a location or a destination? It just had everything from a good meeting space to a good location, good time of year.
I'm going to have to pick on the Breakers. I did something back there in my golf days, and it was the $100 million charity record that we made, and we had Jack Nicklaus there, and it was a stunning location. And the Breakers people were so pleased to have us that they hosted our board for a dinner, and so I looked like the golden person, and it was because the industry was impactful. It was fun. In fact, we have a lovely plate commemorating that event, and so that would be one of the best. But that comes back to that hospitality that they had there at that location, and they're in the service industry as well. So it's that they've got that DNA thing that you and I have, Lucas, with serving people.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it all plays in. I think people underestimate sometimes the experiential nature of getting together. Like, there's so much value, and the meat and potatoes is in the content and the conversations and the connections, but the setting can make it from a good event to a great event, right? And if you leave feeling like I feel energized and I left with good content, that's the A plus, right?
It's true. And I've got board members like that, or members of ours that just say, I just need one piece from every session, and they take away a nugget, and that is golden. They've got it in their brains and they apply it.
I feel the same way about books. I mean, I love to read, and I really go in with the intent of if it's a book I'm looking for, like a textbook, right? It's a business book or it's a leadership book or something like that. I'm really looking for, my expectations are, if I can get 2 or 3 nuggets out of this that I can carry with me, like, that's a win. I mean, and I can usually tell now at this point, a couple of chapters in, I'm like, this isn't the book for me. I'll put it down. Or I've picked something up already. I know there's going to be more gold in here, right? Exactly.
And I do the same with podcasts, and I'm sure you do as well. I have to manage them. Like, okay, there's too many on here. I can't listen to all of these, but it's just this rich content that's available all the time. And you can, whatever it is you feel like you need today. I need something on leadership. I need something on a healthy lifestyle, whatever that is, you can find it. So
Suzanne, something that's not on the resume we couldn't find. I'd love to just ask people this question. I ask people this on interviews and podcasts, and what's something that's not on your resume that we would never find online that's just an interesting, fun fact about Suzanne, something you've done?
I know. I have to share this one because I loved it. When I grew up in the DC area and had the opportunity to work at Great Falls Park in Virginia. So those of you who, it's along the Potomac, there's a Virginia side, there's a Maryland side. So I'm kind of a girly girl, if you can't tell. And at this job, we were, I didn't know what a weed whacker was, but I learned. We were cleaning the trails, cleaning up after the weekend partiers. And on top of that, I was wearing a hard hat. So I know I don't have any pictures of it, but
I was just about to ask.
I know it was such a fun, exceptional job, and so it's a little surprising. But I'm a fan for life of national parks and particularly Great Falls.
That's so funny. You had no idea about about me, but I worked at a canoe outfitter in a previous life, just in high school, college. And I would say I had the same experience. It was so much fun. Literally, my job was to clean boats and guide people, quote unquote, for those that are just listening, down the river. It was the Rappahannock River. You can't get lost, right? It's 100 feet wide. Like that was just the excuse to, go boating for the day and make sure nobody drowned, and nobody ever did, thankfully. The worst we'd have is people would get caught up and fall out and drop all their fishing gear, and we'd help them collect it downriver and paddle back up and get it to them. But Suzanne, I want to be respectful of our time and our audience. As we always like to wrap up with 6 degrees of association, do you have somebody in mind that you think our audience would benefit from listening to?
I do. I have several of them, and I'm gonna name, because I talked about Sonia Riggs earlier. She runs the Colorado Restaurant Association. She was the CSRA president in 2021 and a governance guru. So I would recommend her. And Sonia worked previously with the Colorado branch of the Architects Association. So she's got a lot of governance and great experience. She was named a CEO in her 20s or something, I believe. So she's grown up.
God, started early, yeah.
She did, yeah. And so she's a great one. I would put any of our state executives up for that. So I've got 52 people for you. How's that sound?
Oh, fantastic. If we run short and people can't join, I'm coming back to you.
All right. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much. That sounds fantastic. I look forward to meeting them and having them on the show. And thank you again, Suzanne, for your time. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Lucas.